Most people don't even notice the moment it begins. Not the moment they die, but the moment they stop living. It isn't dramatic, it's ordinary. It sounds like this: I'll start tomorrow. And then it repeats. You say you're being patient, that you need a little more clarity, that it's not the right time. But beneath the performance, something sacred is unraveling. Not loudly, quietly, invisibly. Your life is folding itself away. And the part of you that knows, the one that remembers what you came here for, is starting to go silent. You scroll past your own dreams. You organize them into folders. You whisper someday like a spell, but nothing happens. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who mapped the terrain of the soul, believed we often confuse the ego with the self. We wait for something, someone to awaken the life within us. But that moment never comes, because there's no one out there. The self isn't a savior, it's the part of you waiting to be claimed. And until you do, you will keep waiting, waiting to feel ready, waiting to be noticed, waiting for the fear to go away, waiting for the pain to stop, waiting to be chosen. But here is the truth: clarity does not arrive like a sunrise. It appears after you move. Fear does not vanish. You just get strong enough to walk with it. The people who regret the most at the end of their lives don't regret their failures. They regret their silence, their hesitation, the versions of themselves they abandoned before ever becoming real. It's not just time you're losing, it's memory. You don't just lose the chance to become, you lose the feeling that you ever could. And that's when the real death begins, not of the body, but of the voice, the fire, the ache that once said more. You feel it in the sigh that's too heavy, in the way the days blur, in the silent questions that won't leave you alone. You're not lazy, you're grieving. Grieving the days you kept postponing your life. Grieving the belief that someday would save you. But someday's not coming, because it was never real. It's a myth sold by fear, a spell cast by safety. A trap wrapped in kindness, and maybe right now something in you remembers. The part of you that is not afraid, the one that still believes in the door you haven't opened. The voice that says it's not too late, but tomorrow will ask you where you were. What if the reason you haven't started has nothing to do with motivation or timing or even discipline? What if you're not stuck? What if you're still waiting to be rescued? Jung called it the mana personality, a hidden force we project onto others when we believe they hold the power we're afraid to claim. It's the parent whose approval you still chase, the boss whose recognition you crave, the lover you want to validate your worth, the universe whose timing you're trying to obey. We tell ourselves we're being wise, patient, spiritual. But more often, we're just afraid to take the blame for our own becoming. There's a story buried in 100 versions about a man who waits his entire life at a locked gate. He believes someone else must open it. But when he dies, he learns the gate was always meant for him, and it was never locked. This is what we do. We cast our power onto others and call it humility. We call it loyalty. We call it faith. But what if you're not being cautious? What if you're outsourcing your permission? You say you're not ready, that you need more time, that the world isn't giving you a sign. But readiness isn't something you wait for, it's something you become. You inherit the habit of waiting from those who taught you that action without approval is rebellion. That risk without a guarantee is irresponsibility, and so you shrink. You script your life around other people's expectations. You master the art of self-delay. And then you forget it's a performance. You start calling it personality. I'm just someone who plays it safe. I'm the kind of person who needs to plan. I don't want to fail. But failure doesn't come from trying. It comes from never starting. And clarity doesn't come from stillness. It comes from the next step. Jung believed the self, the whole becoming soul of a person, only emerges through friction, through fire, through acts that feel too soon. So what if this isn't too soon? What if this is the perfect moment you'll one day wish you'd taken? You will not be chosen. You will not be rescued. You will not be found. You must become by choosing yourself. By rescuing what's been buried beneath the waiting. By finding the strength to say, I am the one I've been waiting for. And when you say it, you'll see the truth. The gate was never locked. The hero was never missing. The permission was never theirs to give. It was always you, and it still is. You think you'll act when you feel ready, but readiness doesn't come like a sunrise. It's not a gentle light that taps you on the shoulder. It's a fire, and fire doesn't ask if you're ready. It asks if you're willing to burn. We tell ourselves we're waiting for clarity, but clarity is forged in the doing. You think you need confidence, but confidence is a reward, never a prerequisite. The ones who move first don't feel brave. They just stop letting fear be the only voice in the room. Carl Jung said the path to wholeness requires confrontation with the unknown, not comfort. Not more thinking, not more planning, but the alchemy of lived experience. True transformation, he believed, happens in the heat, not in theory, not in safety, but in the friction between who you are and who you're becoming. There's a story Rumi told about a chickpea thrown into boiling water. It screams, "Why are you hurting me?" The cook replies, "So you'll be ready for the feast." Growth hurts, that's the contract. To become something more, you must first stop being what you were. But we've built a culture that teaches avoidance. We delay with purpose-sounding words. I'm refining, I'm researching. I'm not quite ready yet. But behind every delay is a fear we're not admitting. There's a woman who carried a novel in her drawer for 4 years. She edited it, rewrote it, polished the edges. But she never sent it. One day she walked into a bookstore and saw her idea on a shelf with someone else's name on the cover. Her dream had happened, just not to her. What was missing wasn't talent, it was movement. Not because she didn't believe in the work, but because she didn't believe in herself as the one worthy of beginning. That's what waiting does. It doesn't just cost you time, it erodes your relationship with yourself. Every time you hesitate, your unconscious learns we don't trust our voice, we don't follow through. And over time, that becomes your identity. But that's not who you are, that's who you became while protecting the part of you that's terrified to be seen. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the moment when you realize you're not waiting for the world to open a door. You're standing in your own way because walking through that door means leaving behind the version of you that never risked anything. You don't become yourself through vision boards, you become by acting before it's perfect. By showing up while your voice still shakes. By submitting the thing, sharing the work, saying the words while part of you is still scared to death. You are not your hesitation, you are the one who has a choice. And the fire? It's not your enemy, it's your becoming. So don't wait for it to feel right, don't wait for it to stop hurting. Step in. Because you're not just waiting, you're aging inside your dream, and your dream won't live forever. There's a kind of death that doesn't make a sound. No crash, no scream. Just the gentle hush of someone giving up on themselves quietly. You start by saying no to the things that once lit you up. Then you tell yourself you're tired. Then you forget what it felt like to want more. And eventually you forget that you forgot. Carl Jung called it the living death, a state where the body continues but the self no longer participates. You don't break, you disappear. And the most dangerous part? You don't even realize it's happening. You think you're playing it safe. You say you're being realistic. You call it strategy or maturity or peace. But peace doesn't feel like this. Peace doesn't numb. Peace doesn't silence your voice. Peace doesn't bury your hunger. There's a shadow force at work here, what Marion Woodman called the Death Mother. She doesn't yell, she whispers. She says, "Stay here, don't make a mess, don't risk the fall. Let's not ruin what we have, you've come far enough." And she's persuasive. She sounds like wisdom, she sounds like love. But what she's really doing is wrapping you in the quiet elegance of decay. This is how souls disappear, not with a bang, but with a bedtime routine. You trade your fire for a schedule, your curiosity for productivity, your voice for applause, and slowly you stop dreaming. Not because you don't care, but because dreaming now feels irresponsible. You begin to say things like, "It's too late, I've missed my window. Maybe this is just who I am." But that's not you speaking. That's the Death Mother whispering from inside your fears. And the more you obey her, the more your world shrinks. Until even freedom starts to look like a threat. You don't need another plan. You don't need more time.
You need a break in the spell.
You need to remember that comfort is not your destiny. That stagnation can look like safety until it kills something you can't name. This is not your fault, but it is your moment. The silence you've called peace is costing you your life. And the choice to break free will not come with a trumpet. It will come in a whisper of your own, "I miss myself." So don't wait for the pain to get bigger. Don't wait for a crisis to wake you. Let this be the moment you say, "I refuse to disappear in a life I didn't choose." Because you are still here, and you are still burning even under the ash. There is a moment in every life when something simple becomes unbearable. Not a tragedy, not a scream, just the quiet ache of almost. Almost ready, almost brave, almost starting. But almost never became. You stand in front of the door again. You've been here before. You think the problem is time, or confidence, or the world not cooperating. But the truth is, you've been taught to believe that your life needs permission, that someone else has to name you worthy, that someone else has the key. But no one does, because the door, it was never locked, and it was never theirs to open. Carl Jung believed that the journey of becoming requires the withdrawal of projection. Not just from people we admire, but from the roles we've inherited, the voices we've internalized, the beliefs that say, "Wait until you're chosen." You were never meant to be chosen, you were meant to choose yourself. The longer you wait, the more sacred energy you give away. You leak your power into fantasies that someone will rescue you, that you'll wake up changed, that the sign will come. That fear will leave, but here's the truth, no sign is coming. Because you already saw it, and fear never leaves, it just gets quieter when you stop feeding it with avoidance. This is what Jung called ego strengthening. The moment the self begins to emerge, not by revelation, but by decision. You touch the door, not because you're sure, but because you're done pretending not to be alive. And when you do, something shatters. The story that said you needed more time. The voice that said you weren't ready, the identity built around hesitation. This is the sacred breaking, not the breakdown, but the breakout. You step forward and the myths collapse, the gatekeepers disappear. The key dissolves because the only one who ever needed to open the door was you. What if you believed that? Right now. Not tomorrow, not when the lighting is better. Not after another month of overthinking, what if this was the moment? Because it can be, and deep down you already know that. Or you wouldn't still be here, reading, listening, remembering. So here's your sacred invitation. Burn the script that says you're not ready. Step through the door, then write in the ashes, "I didn't wait." This is the moment most people never reach, the place where excuses run out and a deeper truth begins to rise. You were not born to rehearse your life. You were not made to polish your potential in secret. You were not sent here to wait for signs. Carl Jung called it individuation, but it is not sterile. It is not academic, it is fire, it is fury. It is freedom. Is the rebellion that begins when you stop believing that your fear is the most honest thing about you. You think this next step is optional, but it's not. Because every day you delay, you reinforce the identity of the one who doesn't begin. And every time you obey fear, it grows more convincing. But today you break the contract. Not with the world, with the voice in your head that says stay small. Stay quiet, stay safe. You're not here to perform peace while dying inside. You're not here to build a life that looks good in photographs but feels empty in your bones. You are here to choose, to act, to defy the narrative of inertia with one sacred word: now. Not next month. Not after the certification. Not when you've read one more book on becoming. Now, because the truth is, you already know. You've always known. And knowing without acting is just another kind of self-abandonment. So this is your revolt. Refuse to leave your fire untended. Refuse to betray the version of you that still believes. Refuse to bury your voice in politeness or planning or perfectionism. Don't call it brave, don't call it bold, call it real. Because this isn't about motivation, this is about identity. And the identity you are stepping into doesn't wait. It moves, it risks, it becomes. So let this be the line. Where everything before was waiting and everything after is living. And if something stirred in you today, don't silence it. Speak it, name it, write it down right now. Here's what I've been waiting to begin, then dare to begin it, because the moment you act, you are no longer someone who waits, you are someone who begins.